Now, death opens many to grief, which includes psychological distress, separation anxiety, confusion, and yearning. Many of these feelings are often suppressed by those who have lost a loved one. Let's talk to Saths Cooper, a psychologist, about ways to manage these overwhelming emotions. Prof, good afternoon. Welcome to today. I mean, the country has woken up to the sad news of the passing of Zoleka Mandela, who was very public about her battle with cancer recently. And we just thought, you know, yet again, there's this grief that is expressed publicly. How do we cope? I mean, she's got young kids, for example. I mean, just looking at a loss like this one. She's a mother, she's a loved one, and of course, she's a sister and cousin and all of that. How do families cope? How can they cope at such times?
Well, immediately, it's important to express that grief, you know, and it varies from situation to situation. In my household, we may express it immediately. In your household, you may express it very differently. So we have different ways of expressing that grief and loss. And it does affect all our behavior, how we think, how we interact. It affects our regular lives, and we prepare for the burial or related ceremonies. So it's important for those who are left behind to find a common place that they can relate that which was great with Zoleka. I mean, I knew her when she was in early grade school. And this is a tragedy beyond belief because she's gone through so much. But it's important for those who are very close to her to express that emotion that the situation requires. And to do that, sometimes one may laugh about some moment and the next cry about it. There's nothing wrong with that. There is no one way of grieving. But when all of this happens, one needs to understand that you're beginning to cope with a loss and that there's life after loss. So you need to really take care of yourself and get back to the things you used to do as quickly as possible if you are able to. If you can't, then you need to look for help. Now, one of the common things we tend to do is rely on alcohol or rely on medications and so on. And the research tells us that actually it worsens the situation, if you like, that 70% of the time it's through talking about it, sharing that grief with a professional or with others.
For children, I mean, most of the responses I've seen around, for example, when the news broke was that, oh, my heart goes out to her babies, and she got young children. Yes, as an adult, you and I can make the decision or be supported to go and consult somebody. How do we support children who've just lost a mother?
Well, it's actually being realistic about this, and that's appropriate also to the family context and the social context, and as well as the cultural context, because thankfully most of us have an extended family network and we can rely on it. I would imagine that the children themselves can be overwhelmed by so many people coming through their doors. But those that are dealing with the little ones, her younger children and any of the grandchildren, it's important to allow those children to understand what is happening. That's the first step. Understand that mama or whatever the appellation is no more with us. And however one puts it, one needs to put it in a way that the child answer the child's questions about it, because everyone can tolerate any trauma depending on how it's dealt with in their immediate environment. It's inappropriate to hide anything from those kids because then they'll have a further distrust of the other adults around them. So it's about letting the kids show that emotion, grieve, and cry as is appropriate over this, but to also acknowledge that all of us are here for you, and truly mean that, and check up on those kids. Make sure that they're not left alone. And, you know, the important thing I recall about this young woman, who was very feisty and did many, many important things, is her telling us that she came to herself after the death of her grandfather, after the death of Nelson Mandela, because everyone was in his shadow. And in fact, she branched out. She was not hesitant to criticize all of us, to criticize leadership without feeling fettered in any way. So that's a life to be seriously celebrated, and her close loved ones should celebrate her because she was able to express that which she felt. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and that celebration of her life would ease the grief, or would it?
Yes, it can ease the grief, because it says, if so-and-so, if Umama can do it, I can also do something like that, make something important of myself, and go ahead and be all that you can be within the confines of the terrible situation we, all of us, confront, but that life goes on. And that will begin to sink in as, you know, it's only one day.
Yeah.
And over the next few days, that will begin to sink in. And if the children express difficulties with sleeping, with eating, variation in behavior, and so on, then that needs to be dealt with immediately. Otherwise, the opening to use substances is very high. And I need to stress that given the circumstances that we're talking about.
Yeah, so don't rely on substances like medication and even alcohol, but also hiding the truth from the children is as worse as adults suppressing the grief that they are feeling about the loss.
Yes, because it's legitimate. You're legitimizing. You know, or when all of us feel this, it's legitimate. And some may cry openly, others may not. You would tear. But you and I, Dan, know when we've lost someone very close to us that we did express the sorrow, that tremendous loss. The tears did come to our eyes. We did cry. We can cry. And there's something cathartic about that act. You know, when you let go, when you are confronting that moment, thinking, you know, she's not there. I wanted to say this. And I didn't have that opportunity. Or worse, I said something nasty. I was very stroppy with her in the last conversation. I wish I can undo it, etc. All those things can start playing on your mind. Know that the person you love will want you to continue and be all that you can be and express yourself without let.
Okay, so it's outside the family, and I'm saying in this particular case, in the case of Zweleka Mandela, I mean, she was very open and with the public, with us in the public, in terms of her battle with cancer. I mean, as recently as in August, she was talking about it publicly, sharing her suffering and her journey towards the end with all of us and those who cared to watch and listen. We were part of it. How do we help the family support, and how do we take her death? Because she was very much in the public about her days being numbered.
You know, we got to give her credit for doing this, because she was giving us advance warning. She was giving everybody advance warning that this thing has recurred. You know, it was there, it came back in 2016, she's been battling it on and off. And for her to do that from last month is, in a way, preparing us. And we knew that it would happen. So very few of us do that. What we think we're doing is, we think we're protecting people, but we need, and she was a very open book. What you saw, what you heard, was what you got. And she did the right thing by
So
all
how
of us, by letting us know.
Okay, how do we then do right by her memory? May her soul rest in peace.
Of course, cherish the fact that there was somebody like her who stood out, who was not afraid to speak her mind. She grew into herself and she kept that. She was not afraid to speak out against wrongdoing. She was not afraid in the few times she had to tell us that such and such was wrong and I don't believe in it. Wish we had more like us, like her, amongst us, who can say it as it is and who can tell us things that we are feeling and which we're too afraid to say or to articulate. So this is a young life, extinguished very early, but she's left us with a massive impact and a lot to think about, especially in these terrible times that we confront.
Professor Saths Cooper, thank you very much for your time and reflections in terms of how to handle loss in the aftermath of the death of 43-year-old Zoleka Mandela. May his soul rest in peace. I mean, she passed on yesterday, just a day before today, which is 26 September, which would have been Winnie Mandela's birthday.